everybody. You are here for a really nice presentation. We have with us Jacqueline, Gardy, and Ryder. And the title of this presentation is Critical Thinking and Language Learning Through Comics Creation. So this is a way of seeing English and teaching English in a different way. So you're going to learn how my students create comics to better understand content themselves and others. We'll practice with the tools, strategies, and resources for making digital and physical comics in the service of improving language and critical thinking skills worldwide. Participants will learn by participating and hands-on activities that they can take to the online or face-to-face classroom today. Okay, and having said that, I think we are ready to start.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. If it looks like I'm looking down when you're looking at my camera, it's because I am looking down. I'm on two screens. So what I see is what you see with the slide deck, but I'm looking down so I can see what's going on the platform. So excuse me if my eyes are going everywhere. But I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jackie Gardy. Some of you might already know me, and you'll see me here and there in the Office of English Language Programs. I work in the Office of English Language Programs in Washington, D.C., and I'm the lead for our office's initiative of creating meaningful professional development opportunities, including virtual exchanges and materials. I'm also the creative editor for our print and online publications. I've been working in the office for 10 years, and before that, I was a high school teacher where I taught English as a second language. And I currently live in Maryland, but I'm from Colorado, and I spent a good time in my life in California. So I'm delighted to be here today to talk about critical thinking and comics creation with my friend and colleague, Ryder. Today, the two of us will guide you through 3 activities using comics that you can use today in your face-to-face or digital classroom. And now I'd like to pass the mic to Dan, who will introduce himself. After that, we'll give you a short history of our comic book project, and then we'll get to the activities. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, everybody. My name's Dan Ryder. And I couldn't be more thrilled to join you all here today and to work with my good friend Jackie and colleague and showing you all the work that we've been doing for the past couple of years and hopefully spreading some of that really positive and powerful thinking that has just been transforming and shaping learners and educators all over the world. So I am a middle school, high school educator at a school called CRCS Overman in Skowhegan, Maine. It's a small former mill town in central Maine. And we work with learners ages about 12 all the way up to ages 19 and help them in a project-based learning environment to grow their social emotional health, as well as their critical thinking skills, as well as their career and vocational skills, and help them navigate the world on their terms. So we try to meet learners where they're at. It's a really exciting place. But I've only been here a year because prior to that, I taught English in a more traditional high school, Mount Blue High School over in Farmington, Maine. And I was there for 22 years. But for the last several years, I've been working with Jackie and the office on helping develop content and doing some really fantastic work with creativity and critical thinking, in part because I am the co-author of a book called Intention, Critical Creativity in the Classroom that I co-wrote with my friend Amy Burvall. And it's full of ideas about how to use creativity in your classroom, because that is what I do. I try to use creativity and creative expression to help students show what they know about language and about thinking, as well as science and math and other things as well. So today is all about comics. And the other thing about me is I am a super comic book nerd. I love comics, and I've loved them since I had hair, which was in the Wayback Machine a really long time ago. But I absolutely love them. And I've been fortunate to be able to work here with Jackie and the rest of our team on turning that love of comics and comic strips and visual storytelling, and turn that into a learning experience for learners all over the world. So Jackie, I think it's time for you to tell us a little bit about what that project was and is now.
Sure. Wow. And I'm just looking at the chat. We have people from Ecuador, Peru, Egypt. Who am I missing? Just a lot of people from all over. Bolivia, Turkey. This is really becoming worldwide. So that's super exciting, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what we're going to do today, this is a little outline of what we're going to do today. We're going to do learn by doing, teach by knowing. We're going to give you an introduction to comics for English language learners and teachers. We're going to give you best practices for comics in the classroom and 3 easy activities: panel frenzy and points of view, 1 panel wisdom, and a mashup collage on something called Jamboard. And then we will open it up for questions and answers and anything that you'd like to talk about with comics and critical creativity.
And just a quick reminder that at any point you have questions about anything we're talking about, please throw them right into the chat. And we won't wait till the end. If we have the answers like perfect for us to discuss right then and there, by all means, just put it in the chat, and we'll get to it ASAP.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this started out as an interesting project. So Dan and I were at another conference presenting about, what was it? I think also about critical thinking. And we walked by a comic book store, and Dan said, "I've always wanted to create a comic book." And I said, "Well, that's interesting, because I've always wanted to teach with comic books." And that is how we came up with this idea that let's try to figure out a way where we can create a comic book for English language teachers to teach comics. After the review process, we talked to Relos. We did some piloting of a rough draft of this comic book. We got a lot of different information, and we got lots of feedback from the different people that might be interested in this kind of thing. And we found an awesome illustrator who is actually Dan's friend, Josh. And Josh was the one that did all of the drawing, and the story was written by Dan. We pitched this at Comic-Con International, and we actually got in, and we were on a panel with Fabri, who you might know. He is our Zonk writer and coordinator, and the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, and the State Department in D.C. And we all got together and did a panel at Comic-Con a couple years ago, which was really exciting. Now, you probably want to see what our comic book is all about. Take a look at this graphic. In the chat, let me know what you see. You can say, "I see a robot," or "What else do you see?" And Dan can solicit answers. Okay, Dan sees a horse. Egyptians, you see a war, yeah. The Earth. Civilization.
Yeah, let's see what else people are noticing. Yep, civilization, the Earth, the world. Some pre-Inca pictures, yes. Cave paintings, yes. Nice. So what you're seeing here is actually the history of comics. That's what you're really seeing. You're seeing the earliest comics that we know of, like in the world. They were originally cave paintings. They were Egyptian hieroglyphics. They were Incan paintings and storytelling and ways of keeping track. Early calculators were actually comics, because it was using pictograms to tell stories of how much people had and how quantities and possessions and things. So comics have been around longer than written language. And this is one of the spreads in our comic, in Panels and Perspectives, to just show people that, one, comics are global. They are a international form of language and communication. And two, they've been around for a really long time, because they've always been helpful in helping learners of all ages understand.
Yeah. And Mercedes says comics help students better understand the English text. Yes, definitely. Other people are saying,
pointed out our robot. Yes, there is a robot up in the top left corner, because comics are as old as robots. No, that's not why. It's because that is our character we came up with, Ori, our robot instructor. And Ori is the character that guides people through our comic. And we're hopeful to use Ori in other projects as well. And we chose the name Ori because Ori is also Hebrew for light. It's actually, Ori means light in several different languages, and traditionally shows up as a female and male name. So it's a gender neutral name. And we just really like this character. And Josh actually designed the character. Josh created this whole thing, and we came up with the basic idea. But Josh, that's all Josh's idea. Ori there.
Yeah. And after all the revisions and the writing process, we got this published through the Office of English Language Programs, and you're able to download it for free. Dan has pinned the link on the top of the chat here for this conference. You can download it for free. You might be able to ask your Relo if they have a copy or two that you could have. They were published in the beginning of 2000, but because of COVID and global shipping problems, they're not readily available as print copies yet. I do hope that eventually they will be very easily accessible and be given for free in most places. So there's kind of a slow rollout of this publication, but you should be able to at least get your hands on the PDF download and use it on your device, your phone. You can print it as well. So the book itself is actually, the audience is teachers. So here we have Ori, our robot instructor, and what we guide you through is the introduction, and then the history of comics, the structure of comic books, tools to make comics, storytelling, and why and how to make comics, all in 32 pages. And Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about this page?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we really wanted people to understand is that you can make comics out of anything. And we're going to experiment here in just a few minutes with some of the different ways you can create comics. But a lot of people think, well, I can't make comics because I don't know how to draw. Well, okay, use action figures or building blocks like Lego bricks or similar toys like that. Well, I can't make comics because I don't have fancy pens and pencils. Well, you don't need fancy pens and pencils. You just need any sort of writing utensil. Well, I can't make comics because I don't have really nice comic book paper and nice art paper. You don't need nice art paper. You can use recycled paper. You can use cardboard. You can use pretty much anything. And that's what these two panels show. They show Ori making comics, making stick figure comics, making comics from photography and taking pictures of characters, cutting out images, using collage to make comics. And then on the right, you see where you can just use some really simple materials that you can find in a recycling bin or things that were going to get thrown away. You can take a little bit of string, a couple pieces of cardboard, and some paper, and you have a bound book. And it's a fantastic way for learners to take what they make in your classrooms and turn them into actual products, actual reading matter that they can share with family, with friends, in their communities. One of the things that I like most about making these mini comics and just making simple ones that can be made by folding paper is Learners can make them, and they can make them again and again and again quickly, and then they can pass them out. They can sell them. They can do anything that they want with them. Comics are a fantastic way to reach a huge audience.
Absolutely. And there's lots of steps to making comics, but if you break it down, it's kind of like any other form of writing. You need to have an introduction, you need to have an outline, you need to think about your characters, what the story is, how you're going to lay that out, what world you're going to put your characters in, and how you're going to publish it. It seems like a lot, but all these things are actually kind of easy and fun, as we found out when we created this. You can make comics about anything: mystery, romance, adventure, science, fantasy, sports, monsters, aliens, superheroes. And you'll find that actually a lot of comics and graphic novels aren't just about superheroes. So that's a common misconception, that, you know, the only comics that you'll see are the ones made by Marvel or DC, and you've got Batman and Wonder Woman, and they're awesome. But there are lots of interesting comics out there that have actually quite advanced vocabulary that learners can really learn a lot of English from. And the main point is that no matter how much or how little money, talent, or technology you have, there are lots of ways to make comics. There's also lots of ways to read comics. So we took this idea and we made this into an international cohort of classrooms through 3 pilot virtual exchange programs, where some of the people in this audience were actually part of. And we connected teachers in virtual exchange to talk about comics. At the end of the project, we had 92 teachers from 77 countries. It was a really cool experience, and there's actually a great result from it, which is our 3 anthologies. We have 2 that are published on americanenglish.state.gov, which I'm going to walk you through right now. If you go to americanenglish.state.gov and you hover over resources and programs, there's a whole section called Comics for Language Learning. And once you see that, you'll see this page with all the comics and graphic novels that we have. Here's the publication Panels and Perspectives that you can get for free. And then we've got a bunch of different comics materials, including Zonk, which takes place in Peru, Zonk 1 and 2. We have the Trace Effects comics, if you're familiar with those. We have Why English and a Teacher's Corner about comics. And they're all linked here on the right-hand side. And we also have some webinars that you can watch. They're not live, but they are recorded. And one of them is by Mr. Dan Ryder right here, using comics to think critically. And there are also a couple other webinars that we've done. We have instructional articles about comics. And then lastly, which is what I'd love to show you, is our global comic stories. So Dan and I created this compilation of comics that students and teachers from these 3 exchange programs that we did created, and you can get all kinds of inspiration about how to use comics in your classroom. And all the different varieties of comics. We've got some amazing artists, and then we also have a lot of digital comics and a combination of PowerPoint comics, so pictures with text.
I think Amir is either in this collection or in another, like volume 2, maybe.
Okay, we can try to find him.
Coming through, I think so, but it might be volume 2. But anyway, these are just amazing comics that educators all over the world created that were based on superheroes for their community, that reflect the values in their communities and in their countries. But it's really a gateway to understanding how to make comics with their learners. And we partnered with this great tool called Pixton, and that's what these digital comics were made from. But you don't need digital tools to make it. Oh, Amir's in the 3rd anthology. Thank you, Amir. Sorry. Some of these folks have been working with us so much. I just think they've been around for like years and years. And this whole project was only 2 years. Like, it's only been going on for 2 years. But anyway, you don't have to have the technology piece. You can make them out of anything. If you have, a lot of these you're going to see are just great drawings, and simple drawings sometimes too.
Definitely. So when you have a chance, make sure you go and look at these, because they can give you a lot of inspiration on how to use comics in your classroom. They have two different focus. There's two different focuses on these anthologies. So the first one was centered on the teacher's experience. That their stories were on their own experience related to some kind of topic. So like this one is on climate change. We have, let's see, I think we've got a lot of climate change here. We have access to education.
Yep.
Those kinds of topics. The second one was we had partners. So we matched people from very different places in the world to create a story together. And those are quite interesting because this really shows the power of comics and global collaboration, and that even though we might be far apart geographically, we do have commonalities in the challenges that we're facing. So here we have an example of Cameroon and Egypt. We have Thailand and Kyrgyzstan, Bangladesh and Kenya. And you can see on the map where the people are from that created these comics. So make sure you check those out. And then with that, I'm going to go back to our slides. And I'm going to hand this back over to Dan, who's going to talk about best practices for comics creation in the classroom.
Awesome. So when you want to get started with making comics, the first thing you have to adopt is a creative mindset. And that's one of the things that you can do with all of your learners that can really help them to get to a place where they can make comics and not worry about whether or not they're a great artist. We want them to become really good storytellers. That's the most important thing. So one, be kind to yourself and to others. Be patient, but especially be patient with yourself. It's one of the great things about comics is there's so many ways to make them, and there's so many different styles. We don't have to get hung up on whether or not we're doing it right or not. We can just say, you know what? We're doing the best we can. That leads us to mindset over materials. Just saying, I'm going to make stuff out of what I have available. I'm not going to worry about what I don't. It's really about that creative mindset. And when we create things intentionally, when we make very deliberate choices, I'm just going to use this circle and this triangle to represent a character. That's all I'm going to use. I might give them a hat, and that's just going to be a line with a curve. When we say that's what we're going to do and it's going to be done on purpose, it can make even the most simple comics seem incredibly powerful and convey a ton of information. If we also remember these three principles, these are from, I also do improv comedy, and I have this philosophy I use called ACT, which is accept, communicate, and trust. So we accept the situation that we're in because we can't really change it without doing a whole lot of work, and we really can't complain about it because that's not going to change anything either. We just accept where we're at so we can move forward. We communicate, and we communicate with our words and our actions, and we have to learn to trust others, but especially we have to trust ourselves that everything's going to be okay. And that takes me to the last piece, which is lean into the squish. This is a colloquialism that my really good friend Jeff Bailey, who's a teacher here in Maine, came up with one time when we were doing a conference on using principles of design and using design thinking and project-based learning with our learners. And he said, you know, when it gets uncomfortable, you just have to lean into the squish. So we get all worried and worked up that everything isn't going to be perfect. It's okay. Just lean into it because that's where the really exciting thinking happens. Jackie, I think we might want to get to letting folks like experiment with some things. What do you think?
Sure. That sounds great. Okay, so I think we're ready for our first activity. This is called Panel Frenzy. And if you are familiar with the Zonk 1 and 2, this is a take from that. And we used our own characters for it, but you can also use this with Zonk. And there's a cutout in Zonk 1, I believe, that has the stories that you can use, right, Dan?
Yes. Yes, there is.
Okay.
Now this one uses, instead of using, there's one from Zonk, but this one doesn't use Zonk. This one uses my characters that I came up with.
Awesome. Okay. So we put the link in the chat. It's a bit.ly panel frenzy. We're going to ask you not to make any edits on numbers 2 to 8. And then I'm going to let Dan talk us through what to do.
So I came up with these simple characters, Box and Button, in order to help tell stories quickly with my learners in my classroom, but also with all of you folks and with the rest of the AE Comics VX community. So what we have here are 6 different scenes from a story involving Box and Button, but they're not in any particular order. You can rearrange them into any order you want just by grabbing the image and dragging it around and moving it. There are a lot of copies of this first slide down below slide 9? You're going to start seeing a whole bunch of copies, okay? And you can go in there, pick a copy that no one else is working on, and you can rearrange the characters and the situations any way that you like and add information to tell the story. Think about what you're seeing for context clues about how they feel, what they might be going through. I just did this with my learners this week, and I've got some fantastic stories that I did not expect to happen at all. And if you're wondering what it should, can look like or could look like, we've got about 8 examples there for you to look at. So you can see that in this one, Button's looking for a treasure and it might be lonely. So his friend Box is like, I'm so lonely. I need a friend to have an adventure. So now the 2 of them are finding each other. Box, you look sad. Would you like to help me find a treasure? And then we have this thought bubble where Box is thinking like, oh, I'm getting excited about finding this treasure. And then finally, Button, they find it and says, Box, we found it. I never could have done it without you. What a lovely sentiment. But who knows if things went well? You can rearrange this. This one is just them moving very quickly. This is Box and Button at light speed, which is just made by someone just duplicating it over and over and over again. And I think it's hilarious and great. So take a couple minutes to go into those slides. If you've got the link is there forever. So if you don't have an idea right now, make a bookmark, come back to it, add it in later. Okay. And feel free to make a copy of this and use it with your learners. That's why we put all of our things out there so that people can use them.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so here we are. I see that there are 21 people on this document. So what you want to do is take one of these from 9 to 20. And I think I'll add a few more. Put yourself into one of these slides and start adding something to it. If somebody else is already on the slide, go to a different one so that there's only one person per slide. Does that make sense? Give it a try. We will give you about 5 minutes. So,
it feels strange not to be talking, Jackie, but I think it's okay.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, just toss them right into the chat and we'll try to answer them as soon as we see them. Oh, I like what I'm seeing.
And put in the chat if you're not able to get into the document, and we can work with you on that as well.
Hopefully everybody has, yeah, it's an open document, so you should be able to edit it and click on the boxes and move characters around and move the situations around. I see a couple people in there making some moves. Just taking a look at, oh, go ahead, Jackie.
You shouldn't need permission to edit. You should be able to go right into it. Hoto, that's the wrong link. So that's part of it. So it's this link.
Oh, no. It was the right link.
Okay.
Or it was. It's Panel Frenzy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the right link.
Okay, it is. You're right.
There is actually also a question on the question and answer section.
Oh, I didn't see that. My bad. How do you guide students to focus their comics on the main idea or most important thing the readers need to see in order to understand the message? Oh, that is a great question. That's a great question. I was actually working on that this week with my students. So the first thing I do with my students, I'm hoping this answers the question, is I start with like asking them, what is the story you're creating going to be about? What do you want it to be about? What story are you telling? And then I ask them to draw one scene about that very thing. So for example, I had a learner who wanted to talk about getting into an argument that they had with a friend while they were out running. So they got into an argument. I'm trying to remember what it was about. Oh, it was where they were going to go after they finished running, where they were going to go for a cup of coffee, which I thought was a very bad idea to go for coffee after going for a long run. But that's what apparently happened. So what I told them to do was, well, it's about an argument, right? And they said, yes. I said, so you want to make sure your characters are always in the scene because it's about an argument. But it can be very boring to just see yourselves over and over again. So what we did is we did this thing called zoom in, zoom out. And I am going to try to do something here off the cuff in a moment where I'm going to post a link to where you can get the graphic organizer I created for them to use, like the same thing that you're seeing here, but just different. Also using simple characters out for this run, but we did zoom in, zoom out, which meant we drew the scene zoomed in, and then we pulled back a little bit so you could see a little more of what's happening in the scene, and then we drew it again, pulled back even further so you could see even more of what's happening, so you can get a sense of where they are. And then we zoomed in really close, and it was like a close-up on their face. And then we changed the angle a little bit. And the idea was keeping in focus the objects and the characters who are most important the whole time. Then we went in and added the dialogue and added what they were saying back and forth to each other. But before we even did the back and forth, we just added the same words over and over and over again. So the idea is that with one scene and one moment, from different angles and at different, from zooming in and zooming out, that we can tell a complete story, and it allows us to focus on the main idea. That's one way that I did that, Bernadine. That's a great question, and hopefully it's helpful. But I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go to another window I'm not disappearing. I'm going to be right here. But I'm going to open up a different account and see if I can get that into shareable mode for everybody. Because I think you would find it helpful. Zoom in, zoom out.
Awesome. Looks like we've got some people on slide 27, slide 23, slide 21, 17, and 9. We've got 2 people on 9, so maybe one of them needs to go to number 10. Try to stay in your own slide. Unless you want to collaborate, that's always encouraged as well.
Well, there's panel frenzy. Where'd this go? Oh, I know where it is. Sorry, I just remembered. While I'm looking for that, Jackie, do we want to try another activity too, so that we have enough time to show them all 3?
Yeah, so we have 3 activities for you. And what we wanted to do is give you these activities to look at and play with a little bit. And you can always go back later and keep working on it. You can add one. We've had some fun experiences keeping these open for a while and then coming back a while later and seeing all the great new materials that people have created. If you want credit, just write your name somewhere on the slide and we'll make sure to credit you at any time. And we're going to move on to the next activity. Each one of these activities, we're also going to be giving you a link that you can copy, so it can be your own document, and then you can adapt it how you wish for your own classrooms. So here, next up, we've got One Panel Wisdom. This is another activity that you can do either online or face-to-face. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. This time I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to make sure the setting is right so that I can share it correctly with you all.
I think it's all set.
It's not right. No, it's not right. There we go. Now it should be available. If you could mute your microphone, please. Thank you. Okay, so this activity is really fun. The instructions are very simple. Scroll to any of the slides below, make sure that you're the only person on the slide, and add a caption to one of the scenes that expresses an important understanding about language learning or critical thinking. And as an option, add your name and link to your social media, like your Instagram or your Twitter, and we can share it out to our audience. So here's some examples. This one, we've got 2 minifigures doing something together. And somebody wrote, "Let's make some bread." That's what the caption is, because she thought that this looked like a what do you call it? The roller makes cookies. And number 4 is blank. Check this out. You've got 2 captions. You can either add captions by adding text boxes to each box, or you could just add it here. So that's your own creativity. And it looks like someone is already working on this one. You're adding some information. So we're going to give you a couple minutes to do that. Take a look at all these, claim one of these as your own, and start working on it. Rolling pin, that was the word I was looking for. Hota, could you pin that link, the new bit.ly? Thank you. And Dan, why do you like this activity?
So I love this activity because when I want to create quickly, I don't want to have to worry about drawing things, and I want to be able to explain what I know. And so using these images helps me focus on the language that I'm practicing, or that my students are practicing, and it lets me focus more on the content and less on students who might be worried that they can't draw or they can't create. But they all students learning language and all students learning critical thinking end up working in dialogues. They end up they spend a lot of time focused on conversation. And so that's one of the reasons I like using these tools. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I was trying to mute somebody. They allow us to think more freely about what we're saying and what the characters might be saying, and less worry about, can I show that through my art? Also, I find it really funny when you take pictures from one situation and use them to talk about something completely different. I find that hilariously funny. Like old comics with those thought bubbles and those characters and the things that you can have them say makes me laugh a lot.
Now, Dan, where can you find images to use for an activity like this if you don't like these ones, but you like this idea?
So there are a lot of public domain comics out there, a lot, all over the world. And there are in different areas of the world, there's different websites that have, public domain comics that are older and are no longer held by copyright. So one of the places that you can go is the Digital Comics Museum is one place. Digital Comics Archive is another. But you want to be not all of them are available all over the world. So you want to look to see what's available in your region where you can find things. And you also just want to be aware that because some of those comics, or most of those comics, are actually so old that there can be some really insensitive language in them. There can be some depictions of people from different ethnicities, different regions of the world that show just how far we have come in terms of our relationships in the United States with race and with other people. There's some things in there that are not always the best. So just know that going into it, that you might find some things like, oh, I do not like how this comic is depicting people who look like me. So just know that going into it. But there's also just a lot of old, silly animal comics, silly character comics, a lot of old romance comics with people looking lovingly into each other's eyes. There's all sorts of stuff in there. And there's old superhero comics too. But because they're in that website, you can use them and cut and paste and transform them into learning experiences for your learners. I use a lot of them, but I go through and find the ones I want. I don't just send my students to them. The other thing you can use is Unsplash. Unsplash is a great source of high quality photos that make for fantastic comics backgrounds. You can draw your own characters on top of them. You can put You can put them into something like Google Slides or Photoshop. You don't have to use Photoshop. Photoshop is really complicated. Use something like Google Slides. Keep it really simple. Use simple shapes, simple characters, lay them on top of one of those photos, add some text boxes. There's a lot you can do.
Awesome. And are these your own action figures right there, Dan?
Those are my own action figures. So
mini figures.
They're Lego. Those happen to be Lego figures from a couple of sets. Lego is our favorite toy in the house. My son and daughter have thousands and thousands of them because we love them, and they're really helpful for teaching and learning because they're posable. They can represent a lot of different characters. But I did, speaking of the comics, something I wanted to point out that was very frustrating about Lego is that I was trying to find people of color to use and use Lego figures of color, minifigures of color. And there are very few. And we buy lots of sets, but they have lots and lots and lots and lots of yellow heads, but they don't have a lot of brown, tan, olive skin. Like there just isn't a lot of variety. So I always try to have a strong representation of lots of different people in the things I create and lots of different backgrounds. And so that was a little frustrating. So if any of you know anyone who works at Lego and lives in Denmark and put in a word that they need to start making lots of just simple heads. That's all we need. We just need heads and hands. We don't need, if you could put in a word, it would really help us out. Those of us who are trying to make sure there's lots of representation of different people from different places.
Love it. Thank you, Dan.
Mark, it's such a good book. Sorry, I just saw that in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now you have this idea for comics, and we want to get to the last one so that we don't leave you shorthanded. So let's go to this next one. This one is a slightly different tool. It's called, what is this? This is a, it's a Google tool.
It's called Jamboard.
Jamboard. All right. So Dan, can you explain to us what this is? Yeah.
So on Jamboard is like a whiteboard, but it's just digital. And like a whiteboard, it's really easy to erase things. So you want to be careful on it because if you erase it, it's hard to put it back. And it's very easy to make that mistake. But it's also great because you can quickly put up a lot of ideas. And what we'd like you to do is we've already made a whole bunch of frames in Jamboard. A slide, what we call a slide in Google Slides, is called a frame. And if you go into those frames, you see that there's all these places where you can arrange and rearrange these heads, these bubbles, and these backgrounds to make comics. Okay, and just have a conversation between characters, and they can be made really quickly. This is my favorite one that's on there. It's cold. I know. Yep. Nah. I love it. I think it's hilarious. That's my sense of humor. Why are all these people sitting in the trees? I don't know, but it's delightful. So add a frame and then cut. All you have to do is copy and paste. You don't want to cut anything. You want to copy and paste the characters from one and put them into a new frame.
Yeah. Okay. And they start at 7. So you can actually add. So what I would suggest you do is find yourself one of these and write your name inside this blue. So you just double click on it and you delete this, your name here, and add your name. And then that slide or that frame is yours.
And this is an activity that you can also do with cut paper and, and have a more physical tactile experience, which can be really helpful for learners as well. One of the things that Jackie and I try to do whenever we design these sorts of activities and strategies is to think about, what if students have all the technology in the world, and what if they don't have any technology? Can they do this? Does it rely on the technology so much that they won't be able to participate if they don't have it? Or is it really just a pen and paper activity? And if so, are they going to be able to do it in a collaborative environment? Are they going to be able to do it by connecting with other learners in other places? How are we going to make that happen? Because part of the AEVX was connecting learners, students around the world to each other, as well as educators to each other. So it was really important for us to find ways that both students with technology can create, make comics, and do these really powerful experiences. And also, we want to make sure that if you're in a one computer classroom, or you only have phones available to you, you don't have laptops, that you're still going to be able to participate and still get a lot out of it. Or if you only can draw on paper, you can still participate and use these strategies.
Okay, do you want me to check out and see if people are working on this?
Well, don't check out. You can check in.
Okay, I'm gonna check in
on everybody.
Okay, yeah, look, we've got like somebody working on a frame or a background.
Oh,
Whatever you don't want in your story, just delete.
Yep.
It won't hurt our feelings.
That's also a great thing to do with learners, is to give them lots of things and tell them, delete all the things you don't want.
Yeah. So if you don't like these people, but you like these people, keep the people you like and delete the ones you don't like. And if you don't like these backgrounds, add your own background. You have unlimited creativity.
So it's great to also, just as a reminder, it's really helpful for learners to give them some backgrounds and some places to start, because for a lot of learners, when you just give them a blank page, they get very confused. They're not sure how to begin. So that's one of the reasons why we provide so many templates. I always give my learners, when they get started, templates. 9-panel sheets, or 6-panel sheets, or some pictures to work with, or some text boxes to work with, or some speech bubbles or thought balloons, always trying to give them something to start with. They can always decide to not use them. But for the learners who are really struggling and not really sure where to begin, sometimes we call that analysis paralysis. They're thinking so much about it, they don't make any choices. I have a lot of learners who struggle with that, especially this week. I don't know why, but it happened a lot this week.
I think I have that problem too. So maybe it's not just limited to teenagers.
It might not be.
And all three of these activities are activities that you can do without a computer. So we are giving you the digital activities to play with today, but any one of these things you could do yourself, like a DIY, which is do it yourself. You could draw a bunch of speech bubbles, cut them out, and then put them in envelopes with scenes and with magazine characters that you pick out, you cut out from magazines, or your own drawings of stick figures. And when I was a traveling ESOL teacher, I often did activities in like envelopes. So I would do a lot of cutting and putting like different things in envelopes, and they were portable. They were easy to bring with me. If you have access to a laminator, you can laminate them so that they don't get ripped up. If you don't have a laminator, that's also fine. You just might need to you might need to replace your materials a little bit more often. But basically, we just wanted to show you that there's like a lot of different ways that you could make comics, and you could structure them in a way that they can help you teach core and side topics in your classrooms. So for this particular activity, like some ideas you could use are to create a quick volley, like a discussion on digital citizenship or global citizenship, or both. You could ask your students a warm-up or exit question and have them design a one-frame comic with that response.
Absolutely. And I think, oh, I've almost got it. I think there it is. It wasn't quite as ready to go as I was hoping, but I'm going to be able to show people, anyone with the link can view. I'm going to put a link into our chat with that strategy that I talked about earlier that I said out loud. That probably didn't make a lot of sense because I was just saying it out loud. So,
Dan, Jacqueline, just a reminder, we actually need to finish in roughly 3 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
So if people have questions, please put them into the chat, if at all possible. I'm looking to see if anybody went to the link I just posted.
Okay, and I just sent you a couple different links in the chat that you can click on, and those will make direct copies for you of both of the Google Slides presentations, and then it'll ask you to make a copy, and then that's yours to keep. And you can adapt it however you would like.
And please reach out to us anytime. I know sometimes when you're in a session and you're processing a lot of information, it's hard to think of questions. So feel free to get in touch with us. Yep.
Make sure you download the comic. And here, I'm going to put this on the big screen here again. Here is our information. You can find us on Twitter. You can email us. We are easily found on the internet. So please reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you about anything comics or anything else. We'd like to thank Hota for being a great moderator.
Oh, Hota, thank you so much.
Well, you make this easy. I mean, you are a good tag team, so you can manage everything. I was just enjoying the presentation. And a reminder for everybody, like, this session is being recorded, so you can actually see the replay. If you probably you were working, you got here late, it's going to appear once we are done. It's going to appear in 20 more minutes. It will be, and all the other sessions that have been in this concurrent block is going to be in the replay section. You can find it on the side menu on the left. So and you will find all the presentations there. Now it's time, and you may have seen that the networking and the expo hall has been activated, so you can actually go and network. That is super fun. You're going to have one-to-one meetings with other teachers, and then you can also visit the expo hall where our organizations have some virtual booths. But Dan, Jacqueline, you still have some time for your final comments and thoughts.
Oh, you don't want to give me any more time to talk. That's a bad idea.
Okay.
No,
okay.
I just want people to make things, try things. The best thing you can do in this world is to make things, and make things that bring you joy, and allow your students to make things that bring them joy. And joyful learning tends to be the learning that sticks with us.
Well said. I agree. I don't really have much to add, but thank you again, Hota, and thank you, Denise, for giving us this opportunity to present here at Revolution 2.0. It should be a very exciting time for the next few days, and I wish you luck on organizing this and getting this. It's really great that you're bringing everyone together like this.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, I think that it's sessions like these that make the conference special. So thanks so much to you and Dan.
Thank you.